putting this into our character model project, we can just copy it from the first project into the second. We can see that the hand is way bigger than it needs to be, so we can just reduce that down by scaling it down. We'll just do our best to match where it needs to be on the model. I'm not even sure if this is the correct hand. Let me just take a look. Right, so we need to actually, let's first flip this. This is a right hand. So in order to get this on the left hand, we want to do a flip inside of this coordinates. Is it the Y? Okay, we can just do a -1 in the X coordinates, and that completely flips the hand. So now we can just hold Shift to kind of get it down, facing down like this, and we're going to try to line it up with everything else, just by scaling and stuff. It's clear that it's not going to actually match the model sheet, but I'm okay with that because I actually really like the length of the fingers and the style of the hand. So we're just going to make sure that it's a small hand. You know, on the model, I kind of wanted it to be this small hand. Small features on the ends, the head and hands and feet are all very, very small, and then these limbs are really, really long, just to have a style to them. And then we're going to rotate it to match the direction of the hand here. It's okay that it's not matching right here because we've already determined that this is the style of hand that we want and that we like. So here is the part of the process that can also be really scary and daunting, and that's reducing the amount of edges that you have from one part of your body to the next. So right here we've got this nice low poly cylinder with only 8 sides, and then over here we've got this hand which has 20 sides. So how do we reduce the amount of sides from this hand to match the amount of sides on this wrist? And the way we're going to do that is by cutting some new edges to then create new triangles and polygons that will allow us to dissolve some of these edges into each other, and it'll reduce the amount that we're going to then bridge to this wrist. So first thing we want to do is just delete all of these vertices inside the hand. Make sure that your only select visible elements is selected so you don't delete any part of the hand that you don't want to delete. But at this point now what we got to do is this is that mystery solving puzzle part that I talked about earlier. So what we want to do is we're going to be on edge mode. We're going to deselect everything by hitting Command-Shift-A, and I'm going to cut across this line, and I'm going to be making basically new quad polygons that then will allow us to delete some edges. And it's going to create new little, cute little squares. Where I start, it doesn't really matter because we're just going to be doing this all the way around the hand. So right here, this first edge loop, cut across one of these edges to meet up with this bottom corner. That's going to create a new point right here. Press Escape. M and K brings up your knife. And now what I want to do is cut across those 2 new points that we created, which will allow us to create a new quad right here as well. So right here, these two, we're going to press M and then N to dissolve them. And then down here, this one and this one, M and then N. So now what we've done is we've reduced the amount of edges that it takes to create this shape into 1 instead of 2. And we've got this nice quadrilateral polygon shape that's made up of, so this square now, this huge rectangle here is now made up of 3 squares instead of 2 rectangles. If you want to see that process one more time, because I know it can be daunting, we're going to make sure that we're on like a 4-sided area here. Go up to the middle point on that first edge loop, create a new cut there. We're going to cut across to this one. I think I want to move up this vertex a bit so that it matches a little bit better. It's a little cleaner, and then we're going to cut across between these 2. Oops, I think I might have cut on accident there. Maybe not. So once again, we're not going to remove that middle triangle line. We're going to remove these two by pressing dissolve. Dissolve is really nice because you're not deleting the edge. If I had deleted the edge like this, it just removes that face entirely. So when we dissolve the edge, it just reduces the amount of geometry. And that's kind of what we want. So we'll do it with these as well. Let's just see how many sides we can reduce just by doing that method. So we'll go back to the knife, make sure we're on a 4-sided part, and it's right here. So that's kind of nice that it's on the edge. Boom, we've got it cut there. We're going to cut here. And let's cut across that new cut. Let's reduce. So yeah, now we only have 4-sided polygons at the bottom. So we might be able to just do it like this. So it's one too many vertices here, but I think that's okay because I can just merge these together by pressing weld. So I think what I want to try to do for these at the bottom is I'm going to start welding them. Let's count the edges now. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we really just want 2 more. So down here at the bottom we have way too many edges. So let's see what happens when I try to, what happens if I just dissolve one of these? Well, we've got this new edge here that we don't need. So maybe what I'll do, I'll cut like this. I'll merge this one together. There we go. And we'll just merge this one. Okay, so we have 10 edges and we need to reduce that down to 8. So what I'm going to do now is try to weld some more of these together. Maybe these two and these two. Let's see what happens if I do this. If I do this. So it's asking me to make sure I create a new edge here. So I'm going to create an edge here and here. Whoops. Okay. So guess what? Now we have 2 triangles again. And this is a part of the process where I guess I'd like to just say that when it comes time to actually doing this kind of stuff and you are in a rush or you're on a project and your edge flow isn't exactly perfect, I just want to come right out and say that it's okay. And if you have a triangle here and there, it's not the end of the world. Your model will animate just fine. Your rig will work just fine. Your textures will work just fine. It's just not the perfect best practice. And so you can spend a really long time getting this to look exactly right. And I am going to make sure that on this one, this is going to be quads and not triangles. But in your case, if you're having a hard time getting those reductions, polygon reduce down to what it needs to be able to merge that into the other part of the arm, it's okay. You know, just keep moving through, and you can move on to the next part of this process if you want. I'm going to take my time here and just make sure that this triangle here, in fact, what I think I can do is just cut across here. I have these 2 triangles now. By doing some welding and kind of moving around and shifting around those vertices, I now have these 2 triangles. And what I can do now is I can just make a cut right across these. And that keeps these quadrilateral polygons safe. And it just creates it just turns these into quads. So just kind of a best practice thing. It's not that super important. And even like seasoned veterans of modeling will tell you it's okay to have a triangle here and there. Best thing to do would be just to try to hide it somehow. So if you have to have a triangle, put it somewhere where it's not going to be seen too much. Put it underneath the chin or underneath the nose or something if you have to have a triangle somewhere. So that's what we're doing here. I'm just kind of smoothing out some of this information. But now we should have now 8 sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so now we have 8 sides that we can stitch and sew into this other one. So I'm just going to make sure that we're fairly evened out here. We'll round out this top of the hand. Congratulations, by the way, for making it through a hand model, because that is a very difficult process. And hopefully I've simplified it enough that you've been able to sort of follow along, and you will be more confident each time you do this part of the process. So there we go. We have a fairly octagonal looking edge. And in fact, what I want to do is I want to select that edge using this edge mode selection, and I'm going to extrude out. It tries to go in a little bit, so instead of doing that, I'm just going to scale it and move it up some. So now we've got a separation from where the hand meets the wrist. And I'm going to go ahead and connect this. So the way we're going to do that is make sure that we have the woman body and the hand selected. And I'm going to go back to our mesh conversion and connect objects. We'll make sure these original geometries are saved in our original geo. We'll call this the woman body. Drop that back into our symmetry. And let's try that stitch and sew once more. So this is a new tool. It's called Stitch and Sew. And what it's going to attempt to do is it's going to attempt to merge these together by basically doing the same thing that we did by bridging each of these edges. We'll see if this works. Sometimes it can be a little wonky, but as long as you have the same amount of edges on one edge loop to the other, it should do a fairly decent job. So if you do M and then P for stitch and sew, what you can do is click and drag from the vertex that you want to sew to the next vertex, making sure it's basically the same one. And just like that, it has done a really good job of bridging those two limbs into each other. At this point, I think it's a good idea to just check against our model to see where everything is locating itself. I think I might want to do a little bit of kind of sculpting here just to bring everything down some. That's probably not a good idea, actually. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to select all of this and making sure that only select visible elements is off. And I'm going to, so all of that's selected now, and I'm going to rotate it right here at this axis to just kind of like make it more going in the direction of that model. So do the same thing we did before where we move that axis up. Okay. And then turn off the axis mode so that we can just kind of do this. All right, so that's better. Now we can add some more edge loops through here. I'm going to deselect. Edge loop selection is on. Okay, there we go. Select boundary loop needs to be off in order for you to select some of these edge loops, but I'm just going through and I'm just going to add some more edge loops to define this arm a bit more. And at the wrist especially, we're going to need some more to allow it to bend a little better. And there we go. We now have hands attached to our model. Let's see how that looks when we turn on the subdivision surface. I'm going to turn on the quick shading so you can actually see that. And there you go. So I think it's probably a good time to move on to the head, because that's another, once you've done something as challenging and as difficult as a hand, you want to do something fun. So let's do that next.